Hi there, this is Dr. Clement here, and I want to welcome you to Mastermind Authors College. In our previous videos, we talked about why you should write a book in your lifetime. And after that, we talked about the course schedule, how we would, have classes for 3 months. This is an online book writing and self-publishing course that would last for 3 months. In this section, we shall be having the very first lesson, which would be about the different types of book genres. So I'm going to teach you how to identify different types of book genre and how you could write your own book and classify it correctly. So we would talk about how to write different kind of book. However, my online course is based on how to write non-fiction. So I'm going to be teaching you how to write non-fiction, but it is important that you know the different types of book genres. And so from this picture, you could see that there are 4 main literary genres. 4. And they are, we have drama, fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. My course is going to be focused on writing non-fiction. However, as a writer, it is important that you are able to identify, what genre a book belongs to when you see one. So the first genre is drama, and then we'll have fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. Now, what is drama? So drama is a play for theater told by a character. And so in drama, you would have a dialogue, you would talk, okay? So, but it is a play for theater. And then what is fiction? Fiction is a story that did not actually happen in real life. So when you write a book about a story that did not actually happen in real life, that would be considered fiction. For example, Twilight is a book that talked about events or happenings that actually didn't happen. So that would be fiction. So what is nonfiction? Nonfiction is writing that is real and factual, or that actually happened. So I told you that this course we would focus on non-fiction writing. So I would like you to pay attention. Non-fiction is any kind of writing that is about real and factual events, things that actually happened. You're writing about facts, you're writing about real events, and it is important that you know how to identify a non-fictitious book when you see one. And then the last genre is poetry. So poetry is writing using language and sounds in special ways to express ideas. So in poetry, you're actually writing poems. Okay, good. So let's move to the next thing. So let's start with drama. We already said that drama is a play for theater. Now, drama has 2 main subgenres, and these subgenres are comedy and tragedy. So, of course, a comedy is a drama that is full of fun, right? And that ends, on a good note. And then we have tragedy, in which the drama is sorrowful or ended on a sorrowful note. And then fiction. So fiction has about 8 subgenres. We said that fiction is a story that did not actually happen. So what are the subgenres of fiction? We have fantasy, we have folklore, we have historical fiction, we have mystery, we have realistic fiction, romance, science fiction, and thriller. Okay, I'm going to tell you what each of them means in their next section. So let's look at the fiction subgenres. Fantasy. What is fantasy? So fantasy is a story in a fantasy world. For example, when you say that a plant started talking to you, for example, if you write a book where a plant was talking, you know that is fantasy. That cannot happen and that will not happen. So that is fantasy, is an example of fiction. And then we have the folklore. So folklore are old cultural stories. It includes fairy tales, fables, myths, legends, and tall tales. I'm sure that most of you probably, when you were in primary school or secondary school, you would have read a few books that are folklores. And then the third subgenre of fiction is historical fiction. So historical fiction is a book based on a real history, an event that happened in the past. So this book is about an event that happened in the past, but the characters in the book are not real characters. It looks like it is real, you know, but it is not real because we said fiction is not real. But any fiction that is about a historical event is called a historical fiction. For example, if you write a book about the Second World War, for example, that was something that happened in history. So that would be a historical fiction. Okay, now mystery. So mystery is a story about a crime. Any book that talks, that is about a story that talks about a crime could be called a mystery. And then we have what is called realistic fiction. So a realistic fiction is a story that seems real, but isn't real. Now take note, the difference between realistic fiction and historical fiction. For historical fiction, you're writing a book about a past event. That event actually happened in the past, but you are using characters that are not real to explain that event. While for a realistic fiction, you're writing a story that seems real, but it is not real and it didn't happen. And then the third type of fiction or the subgenre of fiction is romance. So we all know that romance is a love story. So if you write a book about a love story, it would be classified as a romance book. And then we have science fiction. So science fiction is a story about something that will happen in the future. So now it hasn't happened and would most likely never happen, right? Because it is fiction, it means it will not happen because it is fiction. And so, but it's talking about a future event, maybe like a technological advancement in the future, right? That would be called a science fiction. For example, in 2020, there was a book that came to limelight called The Eyes of Darkness. That book was written sometime maybe in 1980 something, right? But that book predicted that in the year 2020, there would be a virus, a viral infection, a pneumonia-like virus, and that virus would emanate from a lab in Wuhan, and they would call it Wuhan, something. So that was a science fiction. It was predicting a future event, but that event happened. However, the author said he was writing about something else, but he predicted that we could have, a pandemic in the future. So that would be called a science fiction. It's about advancement in technology or something that would happen, in the future. It could be about a disease or technological advancement in the future. It is called a science fiction. And then number 8, we have thriller or suspense. So this is a story that makes the reader nervous or excited. Any story any story that is not true, that didn't happen, but causes a lot of, excitement, is called a thriller or suspense. And then let's look at the next genre of book, which is non-fiction. And this is where I want you to pay more attention because our course is going to be based on non-fiction. So non-fiction, we said, is writing a book about real events and factual events, things that actually happen. So under non-fiction, we have the following subgenres. Biography. So a biography is a story of a person's life. So if I decide to write a book about Nelson Mandela, the life of Nelson Mandela, that would be called the biography of Nelson Mandela. If I write a book about Barack Obama, that would be the biography of Barack Obama. Now, the second subgenre is autobiography. So an autobiography is a story about the author, written by the author himself. So if I write a book about my life story, that would be my autobiography. If you write a book about yourself, your life, that would be your autobiography. But if somebody writes a book about me, that book would be my biography, not my autobiography. So the difference between a biography and an autobiography is that for a biography, it is written by someone else about another person, while an autobiography is written by the author himself, and he's writing about himself. And then the third subgenre of nonfiction is called narrative nonfiction. So a narrative nonfiction is a story or a narrative that happened in real life. So if you are telling me about, for example, you're writing about the Biafra War, for example, what you're doing, you are writing a story about events that actually happened and how they actually happened. You are using the real names of the people, who were involved in that war. You are not replacing them with some, fictitious characters. You are using real names, real events, real people. Then that is called a narrative non-fiction. And then again, we have what we call periodicals. So periodicals are like magazines, newspapers, and journals that are written regularly. So these are called periodicals. And then another subgenre of nonfiction, we have reference materials. So reference materials are books with facts in alphabetical order. For example, the dictionary is an example of a reference material, and thesaurus and encyclopedia are all examples of reference materials. Good. Let's move to the next genre, poetry. So poetry is, as we said, writing using special languages, okay, to express special ideas. Now, what are the subgenre of poetry? We have lyric, narrative, and dramatic poetry. So you could have a lyrical poetry, a narrative poetry, and a dramatic poetry. So let's look at it. What is a lyric? So a lyric is a poem about the speaker's thoughts. It includes elegy, ode, and sonnets, and haiku. So these are for people who are into poetry, okay? Now, a lyric is a poem about the speaker's thoughts. Now, what is the narrative poetry? So a narrative poetry is a poem that tells a story, and it includes epic. You are telling a story using a poem. It is called a narrative poetry. And then we have the dramatic poetry, where words spoken by a character. You know what we call the spoken word. So you're speaking and like you're acting what you're saying, and it includes dialogue, monologue, and soliloquy. Good. Now here you're going to take a test. Let's see if you understood the different classifications of book genres and subgenres. So the question is label the genre and the subgenre. Question 1, a story about plants that come to life. Where would you put that? Is it drama? Is it fiction? Is it non-fiction? Is it poetry? What subgenre is it? So you're going to answer that. Number 2, a book about the life of a famous soccer star. Is that fiction, non-fiction, drama, or poetry? If it is drama, what subgenre? If it is fiction, what subgenre? If it is non-fiction, what subgenre? Okay, good. Third one, an encyclopedia entry that describes vitamin E. So what genre of book would this be, and what subgenre will it be? The next one, a humorous play, the taming of the shrew. How would you classify that? Number 5, a long poem about a hero named Achilles. How would you classify that? Number 6, a weekly newspaper called Main Street Times. How would you classify that? A sad play about the character Oedipus Rex. How would you classify that? Number 8, a poem about a girl's ideas about friendship. Where would you put that? Number 9, a story about life in the year 3023. How would you classify that? And number 10, a story about characters who lived during World War I. The characters are not real, but they seem real. So I give you a few minutes to think about the answers, and we would check them together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, let's check the answers together. So number 1, a story about plants that come to life is fiction, and it is fantasy. It is fiction because plants cannot come to life. Okay, so it is fiction and it is fantasy. It is something that is impossible to happen and did not happen. Number 2, a book about the life of a famous soccer star. So we know this is a non-fiction and it is the biography of the famous soccer star. And then number 3, an encyclopedia entry that describes vitamin E. It is non-fiction and it is a reference material. And then the humorous play, The Taming of the Shrew. It is a play, so it is a drama, and it is humorous. It means it is comedy. Number 5, we have a long poem about a hero named Achilles. So we already told it is a poem, so we know that the genre is poetry and the subgenre is epic because it is a long poem about a hero. A weekly newspaper called Main Street Times. Yeah, the weekly newspaper, so it's the non-fiction and it is a periodical. A sad play about the character Oedipus Rex. So it is a play that makes a drama, and it is a sad play. It is sorrowful, so it would be a tragedy. And then number 8, we'll have a poem about a girl's ideas about friendship. So this would be a lyrical poetry. And then we have the story about life in the year 3023. So it's talking about something that would happen in the future. It is called fiction science. The genre is fiction and the subgenre is science fiction. And then we have a story about characters who lived during World War, the First World War. So this is fiction. But what kind of fiction is it? They say the characters are not real, but they seem real. So this would be realistic fiction. Good. So that would be the end of our course for today, and I'm going to leave you with this summary. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. You have a story that you want to tell the world. You have something you want to write to the world. If you do not write it in your lifetime, Maya Angelou says that it would be a great agony. So there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. You need to tell your story. People need to read your books and be liberated and be impacted and be blessed. And that is why I want to invite you to the second, week of our 3 months course. Let's get started. Let me teach you how to do it, how to write your own book. If you have any question, please feel free to write in the comment section, and I would try as much as possible to respond to you. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so, because all other lectures would be posted on this same channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Do have a good day. Bye for now.